So I recently finished up a cut and I wanted to kind of talk about not only how I went through that process so you could kind of see how things go, kind of my thought processes around things, but I also really want to talk about weight maintenance and how much that's confused. And I'm going to start with that topic. And that's weight maintenance isn't really about getting to a certain weight and then just staying there for the rest of your life. In fact, I can pretty much guarantee you that is not going to happen. I mean, think about it. Like, let's just say, for instance, you're, between 20 and 30 years old and you're going to live till 80. Who knows, but it could be. Do you really think you're going to spend the next 50, 60 years of your life getting to a certain weight and then just holding that forever? It's not going to happen. What weight maintenance really looks like is a range of weight that you hold over time with small cutting cycles in between to stay within that range. I'll think about it this way. Let's just say things go really well and you only gain maybe around an average of about a half a pound a month. Right? So to me, that's really good. A half a pound a month, especially if you're going through reverse, getting your calories up and everything. That's pretty fantastic. Well, a half a pound a month over the course of a year is 6 pounds. 12 pounds for 2 years. 5 years, that's like 30 pounds, right? Now, like, that doesn't mean it's just going to keep going that way, but the point I'm trying to make is that even just gradual increases by living your life a little bit, occasionally going on vacation and having fun, enjoying your birthday, having holidays, things are going to come up and you need to be able to live your life. If you're petrified to do anything, have anything you enjoy, ever have any fun because you don't want to gain weight, that is no life to live. Even if you were able to maintain your weight, I guarantee you're going to be happier having a bit more weight, but being able to enjoy your life than feeling trapped trying to maintain a lower body weight. So how I personally do it is I have about a 10 to 15 pound range I'm comfortable in, and when I'm done dieting, I'm not going to diet again for a long time once I start getting into that upper range. So for me, that's generally around 180, maybe if I'm really pushing it up to around 185, but I'd prefer to be somewhere between 170 and 180 most of the time. So once I get to that higher range, I do quick cuts to get back down to the lower end of the range, and then over time, I'll slowly gain that back. Now you may be thinking, isn't that basically yo-yo dieting? But it's not. It's not even close. There's a huge difference between gradual gain over a long period of time versus trying to jump back into a deficit every time you gain a few pounds because you're panicking and this constant screw it, let me gain really quick, and then oh crap, panic, diet back down. That's what's really killing your metabolism. For me, I'm spending a year, possibly 2 years plus out of a calorie deficit. I'm in a really good place metabolically, hormonally, everything when it's time to start the cut, so I can hit it, get in and get out quickly, and then spend the next who knows how long before I need to cut again. So for me, this was my second cut in the last 4 years. The first cut was 12 weeks. This one ended up being 16 weeks because I wanted to push it a little bit further. I'll talk about that in a minute. So in 4 years, that's 28 weeks, and I'm actually including my diet break weeks in that time frame as well. So that's like 13% of the total time where I was in a fat loss phase. And for me personally now, I am vowing, and you're here, hold me accountable, I will not diet again until at least some point in 2025. So that means at a minimum, I've got a little over a year and a half before I'll even consider going into a diet again. And it's just like this strategy just helps with so much more balance and flexibility in your diet. And while I love to get these leaner looks, I really do enjoy it. I would prefer to look that way. I just know it's not realistic to sustain that level of lean, and I just wouldn't be able to enjoy my life that way. So I would much rather spend the next year and a half with a lot of balance and flexibility in my diet, really enjoying things and just living my life. It's not like you just completely stop. Still going to be training regularly, still going to be paying attention to my nutrition and everything. It's just I get to eat a lot more and really have much more balance. And it's just important to really focus on the positives of whatever phase you're in. And like for a cutting phase, for me now, since they're infrequent and I like that shredded look, I get really excited about it. Like, okay, it's time to cut. Let's go. Like, I'm excited to get this new look. I know I'm not going to sustain it, but it's really cool. Take some pictures and everything. And I love that. But I also love the phase where now I'm going to lose some of that leanness, but boy, do I get to enjoy my life as a whole way more than being tied down to try to stay a certain level of lean. Okay, all that out of the way, let's get into my cut. I want to talk about how I went through things and how the process went, but also understand I'm not going to give you my calories. I'm going to tell you how I made adjustments with percentages and all that, but I really wanted to get away from giving exact numbers and stuff because I find too many people play the comparison game, and my numbers are completely irrelevant to you. Even if we're the same height, weight, every stat imaginable, it doesn't matter. We have different genetics, different diet histories. There's a lot of different things that have to be taken into consideration. So you don't want to get tied up in someone else's numbers. And high and low calories is really relative to the individual. Now for me, I've gotten away from more exact macro tracking. What I like to do is go with a total calorie target and a protein target and interchange my carbs and fats however I want. I just find so much more flexibility in this, and I really enjoy it a lot. I still kind of monitor it just to make sure I'm not getting way too far to one side or the other, but for the most part, I'm not paying too close attention to that. But I did start with 165 grams of protein. My starting weight was about 180 pounds, so it was kind of a rough goal weight for my protein. So when I go through the weights here, understand that these are all weekly averages. It's not any singular days. It's not weekly weigh-ins. It's weighing myself every day, taking an average for the week, and then taking that and counting it as my actual weight. This is a way more accurate way to do things. There's too many fluctuations with your weight on a day-to-day basis. So you want to get away from putting too much pressure on any singular weigh-in. So when I was starting, my average weight was 180.6 pounds. My waist was 37.5 inches, and when I say waist, that's around my belly button. And the plan was to diet down to at least the low 170s, but kind of see where things are at, how I'm feeling, how the process is going, and if I'm feeling good, I may make a bigger push to get maybe to the mid 160s to high 160s, just because one, I wanted to leave a little bit more time before needing to diet again in the future. It's also been a really long time since I've gotten very lean, and I wanted to kind of see, okay, can I make that push and have a little fun to get that really lean look, even though it's just temporary. But I didn't want to force anything. I didn't have to get to any certain numbers. Everything always depends on how the process is going. So to start the calorie deficit, what I did was I took my total calories I was consuming to maintain my weight on, and I reduced that by 20%. And as I mentioned, the 165 grams of protein. I also increased my cardio. I wasn't doing much and didn't increase it a lot. Usually I do stationary bike or maybe incline walking for my cardio. I was doing 30 minutes a week to maintain. I bumped it up to 90 minutes to get started. And while I wasn't paying super close attention to my step count, I did start going on a little bit more frequent walks. So maybe around, 3 or so days, doing about 30 to 45 minutes of walking. So at first things were going just fine. I was losing around a pound a week on average. And that's kind of roughly what I usually lose when I go into cutting phases. I'm not pushing that max 1% that I recommend. I'm trying to make sure I maintain my muscle. I want to make sure I can eat as many calories as I can. I want to keep the process working and not feel horrible. So I'm really patient with things and not trying to rush anything. But in week 3, a big monkey wrench was thrown into things. I ended up having an old root canal tooth that got infected really bad, and I was in just agonizing pain. My face swelled up. I like through here. It was like a freaking grapefruit in the side of my throat, and I couldn't even open my mouth more than just a sliver. Like I literally couldn't even put a finger in my mouth. It was just so swollen, and I was in so much pain. And long story short, for the next, it was 11 days. I went back and looked. It was January 26th to February 5th. I was really dealing with this issue, and basically, I just really couldn't eat. I mean, I had to only eat basically it was like protein shakes and applesauce and ice cream and anything that I could just sip on, because it was just too hard to open my mouth, and even any slightest chewing motion at all was horrible. As you can probably imagine, I was not consuming very many calories. I wasn't doing any exercise, but I just was super low calorie, and my appetite plummeted too during this. Like I had no appetite at all. So I wasn't tracking. I don't know how much I ate, but it was not very much during that time. And as you would expect, I lost weight pretty freaking quick. Like I don't usually look at daily weigh-ins, but I ended up losing like 6 pounds in the course of that first week. The averages ended up being a little bit different, but between week 3 and week 4, I went from 178 pounds to 173.7 pounds. And I decided from there, okay, let's just get back on track. I was a little unsure if maybe I should do like a diet week break to get the calories back up again, refuel the body, try to, make sure it doesn't try to guard against fat loss too much from that more extreme method. Like, does your body probably adapt a ton in 11 days? No, but it doesn't like it. I've kind of seen that a lot in the past, where someone will see an extreme weight amount from something like that, and then they come back and it gets really hard to lose for a little bit. But I decided I'm just going to go ahead, go back to my previous cut numbers, just see how the body responds, and we'll kind of take it from there. And the following week, I saw a big drop of about 2 pounds, and this is where things got kind of interesting. So what I decided at this point, that was 6 weeks into things, I was like, okay, let's take my first diet break here. I kind of had initially planned planned on probably around 5 or 6 weeks, diet break in the middle for 2 weeks, and then another 5 or 6 weeks, depending on how things go. Of course, nothing was set in stone, but just probably around a diet break in the middle somewhere. So I decided, okay, this is probably a good time. I was getting pretty hungry and everything, so it just felt like, okay, this makes sense to start taking one right here. So I ended up raising my calories by 400. I cut my cardio in half, and to be completely open and honest, I had a YOLO Disney weekend in there too, where a lot of calories were consumed, so it wasn't a precise thing. But even after all that, I was up about a pound on average from before the diet break started. Now, since my body was responding well pre-diet break, I decided to go back to my pre-diet break numbers to see if things would get going. If not, I wasn't going to be afraid to make an adjustment from there, knowing I didn't have a whole lot of weight I wanted to lose from there anyways, so I wanted to just kind of make that push and try to get things done. So after the first week, I actually ended up gaining about a half a pound, although waist measurement did come down a little, but I said, you know what, let's just get after it. I'm feeling okay, let's just go. So I made an adjustment to my pre-diet break numbers, making a 10% drop in calories, also increased my biking by a half hour, and this is for the week, not every single day. And then I really stepped up my step game, started going for a lot more walks. At this point, I probably started doing 4 to 5 days of about an hour walk. And, you know, looking back through my step tracker, basically my steps went from around maybe 5,000 or 6,000 per day as an average up to more around 8,000 to 9,000 steps per day. But anyways, this is a section I really want you to pay close attention to, especially if you get too caught up in the scale, because you know what? I spent basically from the pre-diet break week through the next 8 weeks, I kind of stayed about the exact same. You know, my weight fluctuated daily up and down between, you know, 170 up to 175. So some pretty big spikes. That's normal. But the average was basically between 170 to 172 that entire time. But what did happen? Look what happened with my waist measurements. Week after week after week, it just kept dropping. It went from 36 inches down to 34 and 7/8 inches in that time. I was seeing physical changes happen in my body. My clothes were fitting looser. The belt notch was down. Everything was showing that I was clearly making fat loss progress. It's just the scale was not moving. So I just kept holding these numbers, knowing my body was responding. And this is very much normal. This is why it's so important to pay attention to everything. Pictures, measurements, pay attention to how your clothes are fitting, and yes, weight, but not just any one of those things, especially weight, because at the end of the day, you're not trying to change a number, you're trying to change your body. And I find most of the time, some of those will move, maybe one of those will move, but the others won't. They don't all usually go at the same time. A lot of times weight will move for a while, but waist won't change. Sometimes your waist will change like crazy, but weight won't change. Sometimes you won't see any change in waist measurements or in weight, but you'll see pictures showing clear differences. Sometimes none of those things show anything, but your clothes are fitting looser. If you're noticing changes in any of those areas, your body is responding, and don't change, keep on going. It just takes time for the other ones to show up. So anyways, after being basically the exact same weight for 4 weeks in a row, finally in week 14, I saw a drop on the scale, along with the waist continuing to go down. At this point too, hunger was starting to get pretty bad. Definitely the effects of dieting was starting to show up more. I was super food focused. All I could ever think about was when was my next meal. I'm friggin' hungry, starving all the time. My energy levels were dropping, you know, mood was starting to drop. Definitely the effects of getting leaner and being dieting for a while was starting to take over. So I was kind of paying attention to this. Wanted to try to just finish things up, but I wanted to maybe just get a few more pounds done and see. By week 16, I was down to 168.53. Waist saw a big old drop again. At this point, I was really lean, but also kind of over it. So I decided, you know what? I'm going to do something here. I'm going to take a 2-week diet break and see how things go. What I mean is, after those 2 weeks, if I felt much better and I got excited again to try to see some more fat loss and make one final push to get a bit leaner just for funsies, just to kind of snap some photos, because at this point, at this level of leanness, this is when the fun stuff really shows up, where every single little pound can make a difference, and it can be really exciting. But I also have to listen to my body, and if it's not there, trying to force it is like the worst thing you can do, regardless of how lean you think you are or should be. If you try to force it when it's not there, bad things happen. So it was either take a 2-week break. If things are good, I'd go right back to the previous dieting numbers because I was in a position where I was just not willing to drop further calories. Plus my body was responding. If it was not there mentally, or if I was still super hungry and everything, then that 2-week diet break was basically the start of my reverse then. And that's not a bad way to do things if your body's still responding and you want to finish your cut. Just take a diet break to start your reverse, and that way you can make a bigger increase and get some of those benefits faster, and then take the slower increases from there. So I bumped up my calories by 300. I cut my cardio in half, and after 2 weeks, you know what? I actually felt quite a bit better. I even lost a pound on the scale, which is not that abnormal during a diet break, and thought, you know what? Feeling pretty good. Hunger is much better. Let's give it a shot. Let's see if we can get freaky lean and just have fun with it. Plus, give myself more wiggle room for weight gain in the future before my next cut has to take over. And I'm telling you, within 2 days of being back in that deficit, I was done. I was miserable. I hated it. I didn't want to do it. I was fighting it. My body was fighting me. The hunger came back with a vengeance. It just was like, it was clear as day that my body was done and this was not the right decision. So I pulled back out, brought my calories right back to the increase of the 300 for the diet break and an additional 100 on top of that to kind of start that reverse process, and said, you know what? Not there. That's okay. Things went well. I'm happy with where I'm at. I've got plenty of wiggle room to gain slowly over the next year and a half. Let's just be done and call it a day. But of course, if you've seen my videos, you know that doesn't mean the hard part's over. In fact, it's just beginning. Like, the reverse process is usually the hardest part. This is when hunger really kicks up, and it can be a battle, not only physiologically because your hunger hormones are all off, your metabolism's slower from the dieting, and your body wants you to gain the weight back. So it's a battle, but you need to expect that and not think, okay, I'm going to get more food, therefore I'm not going to be hungry. I'm prepared for it. I know it's happening, and I know it will subside in time. But if you aren't aware of that, it can really mess with you mentally, and you need to be prepared for that and know that if you don't want to just rapidly gain your weight back, you need to stay diligent with this early part of the process. And a lot of times, honestly, it can be almost like a magic window, and you even sometimes still lose in the earlier stages as you see your metabolism ramp up, your energy levels improve, and it's a challenge. And there's a lot of reasons why it's really hard to keep the weight off when you lose it. And I actually have a video that I'll put up top here that you can check out next. It goes into all the different reasons why it's so freaking hard to keep the weight off. Everything you need to consider both physiologically and psychologically so you can avoid gaining all the weight back and put yourself in a good position to go through these cycles. Let me know if you have any questions about anything, and I'll see you over in that other video.